Howdy, let's move on with video 2, system hardenings and baselines. And let's remember that there's 4 videos in this. I'm going to pick up where we left off. I'm going to go quickly through some of these slides that I'm not going to hold you responsible for. However, I've had some input to not hide the slides, but leave the slides so you can see the whole thing, which I've done. But listen carefully, because I will emphasize to you what you do need to know. So for instance, when we talk about updates, we talk about hot fixes. It's a small software update designed to address a specific problem. And the term hot typically means like, do it now. This is a hot fix. We have a problem, take care of it now. Whereas a patch is a more formal, larger software update that may address several or more software problems. And, here are patches available. But typically a hot fix, as it's used in industry, is here's a small software update. We found a specific problem. The reason it says hot fix is you need to implement this now. A service pack is a large collection of patches and hot fixes rolled into a single, rather large package. Here's the deal. If we ran our patches and we had strong passwords, we would eliminate so many of our cybersecurity issues that we could focus on that 20% of really hard problems. If just from those 2 things, updates through your patches and strong passwords. So whether it's a hot fix, a patch, a service patch, whatever, they need to be run on a regular basis. And it is amazing when you get out in the real world how often this is not done. Oop, I lost my screen for a minute. Sorry. Okay, so again, I'm not going to hold you responsible for this. I'm just including this. You've probably all seen these if you use Microsoft about updates available for download. Now they do it transparently. They'll say, we're running this, we're doing this. At one time, Microsoft security was criticized. It has gotten much, much better. It's actually pretty good right now. Okay, so every operating system requires some kind of software updates. Each operating system has different methods of assisting users and keeping their systems up to date. They typically make updates available for download from its website, or they do it automatically in Windows 10. I don't do Linux, so when you patch one, depends on a great deal of specific version. There's probably people in the class that know more about this than me. My life went from being a programmer and an analyst and really in the insides of the computer to being more of somebody who spends most of their life writing and reviewing documents. So I just do with what's most efficient for me, which is Microsoft Word. But regardless of whatever you use to update the operating system, you have to keep them up to date. And applications require patches. I, at one point in my life, developed software that we put out in the real world to be used, and people would come up with bugs. And we originally attempted to do them all almost like hot fixes. Oh, we got to change. And then we realized we were not managing the configuration. So as we decided to make enhancements or we found errors, we would have controlled patches or revisions of software, whatever you'd like to think of it, every 6 months. So we had some control over it. If we found an error that was critical, of course, that would be different. But most of the time it was little, I don't want to say non-material errors, but non-material errors, something that wasn't going to bring the system down or corrupt the database. So we would then regularly roll out the patches, as we called them, revisions, every 6 months or so. So what it says is managing the wide variety of applications and required updates from numerous different software vendors can be a daunting challenge. So take the fact that you're a system administrator and you have my company and you're running 200 or 300 software applications, which is not unusual in an enterprise environment, and figure out how you're going to do the configuration, make sure there's no conflicts. One system doesn't do something that's going to cause problems in another. And when it says there's a niche market for patch management software, it's true. Most enterprises use some form of automated patch management, reduces labor, but most importantly, besides reducing labor and cost, it also provides a controlled way to do it and traceability. Because so many times when there's an incident or when something happens, it is important to go back and revert back and see if you don't, revert back to an older version of the system, see if you can at least figure out what happened that may have caused the incident. Anti-malware, the survival time of an unpatched Windows PC on the internet is less than 60 minutes. Somebody might want to go to SANS and check this out, but probably true. Automated probes, botnets, worms are out on the internet. And fortunately, as this slide says, as the threats increase in complexity and capability, so do the products designed to stop them. So we have an antivirus. They attempt to identify or neutralize malicious programs, macros, and files. It's signature-based scanning. It's heuristic scanning. So signature-based says, I'm looking for a certain set of attributes or characteristics. I've seen this before, so we're going to put it in the signature database. And this will catch known viruses, but it's limited by what it actually has. So it doesn't know what it cannot catch. So we have these zero-day attacks on unknown vulnerabilities and the like. So heuristic scanning is looking for commands or instructions, something anonymous, not normally found in an application. You're trying to access reserved memory registers, something that looks like you're trying to cause a buffer overflow. And that's why they're heuristics. Heuristics are only as good as the who captured that information and put them into your heuristics database or your heuristics rule set. And anti-malware is a need for virus protection on servers, depends a great deal on the use of the server. And you see I've taken the rest of that out, but left there for those who want to read it. Anti-spam, again, get rid of the junk. This is where you see blacklisting. We know these are bad organizations. Put them on the, don't let them in. This can be done through header filtering. The anti-spam products looks at the message headers to see if they look forged. The email headers typically contain information such as sender, receiver, services. Content filtering, the anti-malware looks at the content to determine if it's keywords or phrases that are common to spam. Language filtering, user-defined filtering, trapping. Some products manage unpublished email addresses for incoming spam. Enforcing the specifications of the protocol. Some spam generations tools don't follow the normal SMTP protocol. Or egress filtering, that this technique scans mails that leaves an organization to catch spams before it's sent to other organizations. So blacklisting, header filtering, content filtering, language filtering, trapping, all of these are incorporated in the products for anti-malware. And most antivirus products include anti-spy capabilities as well. Spyware defines those things that tries to steal information from the system, such as keystrokes, passwords, pins, keys. It helps protect your systems from the ever-increasing flood of malware that does just this. Your keystrokes, your passwords, anything it can pick up that you're entering. And we all love pop-up blockers because it combats pop-up ads. Whitelisting versus blacklisting, important. Blacklisting is essentially noting which application should not be allowed to run on the machine. Whitelisting is the opposite. Here's only what's allowed. Pros and cons for both. Pros and cons depend on what you are doing if you're going to blacklist or whitelist. So there's other parts of the operating system to control. There's software restrictive policies that use group policies and allow significant control. There's user account level control. Basically, all of these have in common is their applications to be controlled at the OS, so we can figure out what's the good stuff or what's the bad stuff, or try to prevent the bad stuff from getting in. And a trusted operating system is one that's designed to allow multi-level security and the ability to meet a series of criteria required by the U.S. government. And you might think, why is the U.S. government in this? Well, anything that's interstate commerce is regulated by the U.S. government. Anything that's sold to the federal government or the military or is in that supplier chain is regulated. So basically, you want to meet the series of criteria required by the U.S. government, because you're going to fall into one of those buckets. You're going to be a defense supplier or government supplier. You're going to be in the supplier chain. You're going to be doing e-commerce. You're going to be doing something, and that's the power of the U.S. government to regulate that. There is something, I don't know if it's on this slide. No, I don't see it. There's something called Common Criteria for Information Technology Security Evaluation, and it's basically a harmonized security criteria recognized by many nations, and that's why it gets the term Common Criteria. So if you run into this term Common Criteria, just know that's a bunch of governments that got together and said, okay, this is what needs to be in each of these. Host-based firewalls are personal firewalls that are just on the host. It's designed for the end user. If it has a configurable security policy, you can determine which traffic is good, which is bad. And there's a number of these that come with the operating systems as well as commercial packages. Hardware security in the form of servers, workstations, and mobile devices, that could be your weakness, just because, as I said earlier, we have the dynamic networks. We can plug something into our computer and change the topology and the functioning of a network. So hardware in form of everything, servers, workstations, mobile devices, it's like your first defense is that device. And there's a lot of things you can do. You can do physical safeguards. You can just prevent allowing to use them, saying you can't use these on our systems, but it's to prevent. So when we're talking about hardware security, we're talking about physical and electronic. Physical, as he says here, cable locks and the like, locking cabinets and safes to make sure it's not stolen, physical. And then electronic is what you do to reduce the vulnerability within each of those devices. And we close with this. The process of establishing software-based security is often called baselining. And it's a security baseline that allows the software to run safely and securely. And if something bad happens, the system can revert to the baseline, and it can go back and check to see what happened between the baseline to the point where the incident or security was compromised. And this is why you have logging. This is why you do configuration management. This is why you control your patches, your system upgrades, and the like. So it's obviously critical in large-scale operations, because trying to maintain separate configurations and security levels for hundreds or thousands of systems is too costly. And you have to remember, you have to look at the enterprise and what the size of the enterprise is. Even a small business of 100 people, you're going to have 100 different computers, and then you're going to have smartphones. You're going to have all this that you have to worry about. So you would try to establish a software-based security, and it's a baseline that allows the software to run safely and securely. That ends video 2. We'll go on to video 3.